Straight ahead on Law&Crime Daily. Attorneys for Scott Peterson are back in court. Why the convicted killer is preparing for a new trial.
If you play it out, there's no way they convict him.
The so-called black widower gets his conviction thrown out for murdering his wife and the man he's accused of hiring to kill her.
How many other people are on death row and get a shot at another trial?
Plus, Iowa farmers face off in the state's Supreme Court. The civil case over a deadly shooting.
Jason was liable for killing his mother.
And we break down police body cam footage of a man killed in front of his own home. Why his family is calling for mental health reform. Law&Crime Daily covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome everyone to Law&Crime Daily. I'm Brian Buckmire along with Terri Austin. Convicted wife killer Scott Peterson will have to wait a little bit longer to hear when he'll get a new sentence. Peterson was found guilty of murdering his wife Lacey and their unborn child Connor on Christmas Eve 2002. Investigators say Peterson dumped Lacey's body into the San Francisco Bay, where it later washed up. He was sentenced to death, but the state's highest court overturned his penalty, saying prospective jurors were improperly dismissed at trial. Peterson's trial attorney insists he's innocent.
I mean, people can talk about he's guilty, he's guilty, he's guilty. The fact is, nobody knows or knew that evidence better than our team did in real time. And there wasn't a single person on the team who didn't feel as if there was a complete collapse of any evidence. By the way, including the trial judge at various times during this case.
The California Supreme Court is also ordering a San Mateo County judge to determine if Peterson could get a new trial. In this separate appeal, the High Court found a juror committed prejudicial misconduct by not disclosing that she was a victim of a crime.
There is no, to my mind, justice that has been for Lacey, for Scott, for Connor, or for either of the families.
Peterson appeared via Zoom for a status check on his case. He's being held in San Quentin State Prison. Peterson waived his right to a speedy trial. He's due back in court April 27th. Joining me now is criminal defense attorney Julie Rendelma along with Terri Austin. Julie, prejudicial misconduct could be the reason Peterson gets a new trial. Do you agree with the judge here, though?
Oh, absolutely. Keep in mind, we have two things going on. We have the sentencing where he's getting a new sentence, and now we potentially have a new trial. You have basically a juror that lied about the fact that she was the victim of something and that she was involved in a civil issue with regards to an order of protection, which kind of goes to the heart of this specific case, particularly Lacey being pregnant. So it's shocking that obviously she didn't reveal it. And I think that it's a huge issue, particularly when it comes to this jury making determination, not just about guilt, but about the death penalty.
Absolutely. It wasn't just that she was a victim, but the facts of her case were very close to that of Scott Peterson. Terri, even if there is prejudicial misconduct, that doesn't guarantee a new trial. Why, and do you think there should be a new one?
I agree with Julie here. There should be a new trial, as much as I want to see him convicted, because I do think that the evidence points directly at him. He is entitled, as all defendants are, to due process. And if there was jury misconduct, then in fact, the, verdict should be overturned and they should get an opportunity for a new trial. One thing I will say, Brian, if in fact we have a new trial, the prosecution is really going to have to make sure that the jury is selected properly, that it's an unbiased jury, and that the evidence that goes in cannot be the cause to overturn yet another verdict.
Yeah, and this is a situation, Terri, just as a follow-up, where it's not the evidence that was presented, but merely the fact that one person should not have been there. So will we likely see a same trial and potentially a same verdict if this case does go to trial again?
I think they're going to put in all the same evidence, Brian, but I think that they're going to be very careful in jury selection and make sure they don't have someone who is potentially going to have the case at the end of the day overturned like we had here. That is a distinct possibility.
Of course, no matter whether you're guilty or innocent, you still have to have an unbiased jury to evaluate that evidence against you. Otherwise, the system that we have and we love so much doesn't really work. Thank you both. Turning now to other top news, Terri Austin has an update to the Capitol riot.
Yeah, Brian, the Capitol police officer recognized for his bravery during the insurrection was tasked with another very important duty, escorting the vice president-elect to be sworn in. Officer Eugene Goodman walked Vice President Kamala Harris to the inauguration ceremony. He was promoted after the riots and is now acting Deputy Senate Sergeant at Arms. Goodman was seen on January 6th being chased up the Capitol stairs by a mob. He then tricked the rioters into following him away from the open Senate chamber to a hallway where more officers were waiting.
A Pennsylvania woman accused of stealing a laptop from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's office has been released from jail. A federal judge ruled Riley June Williams could be released into the custody of her mother and must appear in court in Washington, D.C. on Monday. Williams is charged with theft, obstruction, trespassing, violent entry, and disorderly conduct on Capitol grounds. According to the FBI, a former romantic partner of Williams tipped him off that she claimed she hoped to sell the computer to Russian intelligence. Williams' defense lawyer told the judge that his accusations are overstated. Still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, a farm family torn apart by murder heads back to court. But first, why a conviction and sentence for a man found guilty of killing his wife and a hitman is being thrown out. The latest twist in the bizarre case after the break. A man convicted of hiring a hitman to murder one of his 6 wives in Las Vegas is getting a new trial. Angenette Levy has more on the case and an interview with the creators of a new podcast that have exclusive interviews with the defendant.
Yeah, Brian, Thomas Randolph was sentenced to death for the 2008 murder of his wife, Sharon. He says he is stone cold innocent. The Killer Genes podcast is brand new, and it takes a deep dive into the case.
My wife's been shot, and there's a guy in my house, and I shot him.
Prosecutors say that 911 call was staged and that Thomas Randolph paid a hitman to kill his wife, Sharon, in 2008 to collect life insurance money, and then killed the hitman. Randolph's been talking to Melissa McCarty and Kelly McLear, creators of the Killer Genes podcast.
I've been talking to this man for 3 years, and he has never wavered in his stance that he is an innocent man. And we're not here to say whether he's guilty or innocent, but it is someone that prosecutors are calling a socio and psychopath.
Randolph has been dubbed the Black Widower. He's been married 6 times. 4 of his wives are dead, including Becky, who died in Utah in 1986. Randolph was acquitted of her murder. Prosecutors discussed that at his trial for Sharon's murder, and that's why he's getting a new trial.
Is Thomas Randolph just a guy who is completely unlucky in his love and his marriages and just seems to always be in the wrong place at the wrong time? Or is this man a genuine serial killer and a psycho and sociopath?
And that's the question these podcasters are trying to answer. I contacted the Clark County District Attorney's Office for an interview. My request for that interview was declined, and I was also told there would be no comment. Thomas Randolph is going to be in a Nevada courtroom later this week. Brian.
As I understand it, this is a 2-part podcast, so Thomas Randolph had a lot to say.
Yeah, that was the interesting part of this interview. They said that he had a lot to say all of the time. He talked to them quite a bit, and it was very unfiltered. They said he has an answer for everything, and he actually admitted to being a serial cheater, but he says he is not a wife killer. So that part was very interesting. And I should mention that Randolph's daughter actually told the podcasters that she is very glad that her father is getting a new trial. But Sharon Randolph's daughter said that she believes he is guilty and that she will be in the courtroom each day of that new trial.
Thanks for the update, Angenette. Our panel is back with us for legal analysis. Terry, serial cheater, but not serial wife killer, or wife killer as he says. What do you make of the court reversing the conviction?
You know, again, I'm going to say due process is due process. And, you know, under both federal law and Nevada state law, if you have evidence of a prior crime, it cannot be admitted to show propensity or character evidence. And so what they needed to do here was to show that it was something to do with the motive or intent, and that way it may have been admitted. So I think that, you know, this is one of those cases where even if you believe that the individual was guilty, you just have to make sure that you are introducing evidence properly, and that because you failed to do that, the case won't be overturned.
Absolutely. Now, Julie, the conviction is overturned and a potential trial is on the horizon. Do you think the defense has a chance now that the prosecution might not be able to use one of the wife's deaths as evidence?
Sure. I mean, I think they have a chance. Obviously, it's going to be an uphill battle because, they had basically the jury not just considering one murder, but they were considering two murders. And one of the things that stuck out when there was a reversal was the fact that the first trial resulted in an acquittal. So they were like, why are we bringing in evidence from a case in which there was acquittal, which brings back the Durst case, because that's coming up, too, that we're following. And in that case, they're allowing in an old case where there was an acquittal. And so it's interesting what the appellate issues could be with Durst, and they may be very similar to what happened here.
Yeah, if you're acquitted, how can you bring that back up in a trial you're being prosecuted for? Angenette, what do you expect of Randolph's upcoming hearing to be about?
Yeah, this is really going to be the first hearing in this new kind of phase of the retrial. So this is going to be a lot of housekeeping issues. He doesn't have a lawyer right now. He had an appellate lawyer, but now he is going to have a new trial lawyer appointed for him by the court, likely going to be a public defender. And there will likely also be some scheduling issues taking place for future proceedings. And we also found out that he has been ordered by the judge to appear in person. He can't really appear in person per se, but they are transporting him, and he will appear via video conference for that hearing in Clark County.
All right, so it's probably going to be a lot of moving pieces before we even get to any resemblance of a trial or a hearing, of course, because you have to sign a public defender or some sort of counsel. And obviously, we've got COVID-19 on as well. Thank you, everyone, for the update. Coming up on Law and Crime Daily, prosecutors in the George Floyd case lose their motion for a second time. Plus, should a civil judgment for a man acquitted of murder be thrown out? Our expert analysis ahead. A father and son are going head-to-head in the Iowa Supreme Court over a $10 million judgment. Chief investigative correspondent Brian Ross explains why a murder on the farm is behind this civil case.
This is a family tragedy. Jason Carter, accused by his father, Bill Carter, of murdering his mother, Shirley Carter, in 2015. Jason Carter was found not guilty in a criminal trial, but he was found guilty in a civil trial. Now his lawyers will ask for a new trial from the Iowa Supreme Court. Arguing on the other side will be Bill Carter's lawyer, Mark Weinhardt. He told me that he is confident the court will turn down this request.
Bill is firmly convinced that Jason killed Shirley, which has to be one of the most shocking and troubling things that a father could ever conclude about his own offspring. And yet Bill came to that conclusion based on the evidence.
And essentially the information is that there were other people with criminal records in the community who were possible suspects. There were tips about them. Investigators say they ran down all those leads and not determined that anybody else was responsible for the murder other than Jason.
I'll fight this to the bitter end. There's no doubt about that. Until this is overturned or something's done different, just have to keep on putting up a huge fight.
It's a sad situation, a farm family torn apart by this murder. Jason Carter maintains if he is given a new trial, he's ready for it. He said, bring it on.
Thanks, Brian. Back with me are our legal experts, Julie Rendelma and Terri Austin. Terri, criminal trials have a higher burden than civil, so it makes sense that you could be acquitted of a criminal case, but not a civil. But here, we're talking about a potential appeal. Do you think that the fact that they won the criminal case, they could strengthen old arguments in any potential civil case?
Well, it's really strange here. I've never seen anything like this. I mean, it's a wrongful death action, and that's how they got the verdict in the civil case. And the judge actually said that, previously the result of the criminal trial doesn't make the civil jury's findings invalid. And so, it's two separate standards of proof. It's two different cases. Obviously, one jury decided that, in fact, it was the son and he owed the money. And the, criminal will have to see what happens there, but it should not one affect the other. So we'll see what happens with the criminal.
Yeah, Julie, and we've seen this before when you see like officers shooting individuals, the civil case, they may win, for example, Breonna Taylor, and the criminal charges don't follow. So is it kind of the same thing here where we're looking at this case and saying, I'm not sure if there's gonna be a stronger appeal in the civil case, or am I getting this completely wrong?
So look, I mean, as Terry said, the civil case happened first. In the civil case, they found him liable, and that was a preponderance of the evidence. The criminal case happened second, and they determined that he was not responsible based on beyond a reasonable doubt. The position of the defense is, wait a second, we shouldn't have had to do this civil case first because we should have waited till we got all the evidence in the criminal case in order to, be able to better strengthen our arguments in the civil case. And B, that there was information from the prosecution that wasn't provided to the civil attorneys for Jason Carter that prejudiced them during that case. I'm not so sure at the end of the day the judges are going to, give him another shot at this. But certainly, there were some arguments made during the appellate hearing that seemed to potentially favor the defense in terms of certain evidence that they should have had a hold of during that civil proceeding.
Now, Julie, if you're a gambling person, based on what you saw in that hearing, do you think this lends itself towards Jason Carter or against him, based on the arguments you heard?
During, when Jason Carter's attorneys were talking, I was like, I think that they're going to go with him. And then all of a sudden I switched because then we heard from Bill Carter, the father's attorneys, and they were asking him poignant questions. He was having difficulty answering some of them. So I'm really in the middle. I hate not being able to make a decision, but I think it's going to be hard for them to overturn it, but I think there's an opening for that to happen.
All right, we'll see if we'll be able to make that opening for it to happen. Thank you both, Julie and Terry. When we come back, the police body cam video of a deadly shooting in Texas. Why the victim's family is calling for justice. Next. A judge has yet again denied a motion to delay the trial of one of the ex-cops charged with murdering George Floyd. Former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin is scheduled to go to trial in March. Minnesota Judge Peter Cahill ordered Chauvin be tried separately and before the three other ex-cops. Prosecutors had asked the judge to reconsider that decision and for the trials to be rejoined. Judge Cahill didn't provide a reason for the denial, but previously said that other jury trials in Hennepin County are underway. Jury selection is slated for March 8th. Tune into Law&Crime Network for gavel-to-gavel coverage. Police in Texas have released body cam video showing the deadly shooting of a man in front of his own home. Patrick Warren's family reportedly called 911 on January 10th asking for a mental health officer, but was told one was not available.
Killeen Police.
Video shows Killeen police officer Reynaldo Contreras arriving to Warren's home.
Is the door open? Hello.
How you doing? Hey.
Okay.
How are you?
The officer sees Warren inside, who is gesturing for him to come in further.
Guys, come on in. Come on in. What I say.
Okay. Hold on, man. Let me.
No. Come on.
Okay.
Come on.
The officer then goes outside and calls for backup.
No. I'm gonna walk back out. I don't work like this.
About 90 seconds later, Warren comes outside.
Let me see your hands. Let me see your hands.
Warren moves towards the officer, who then fires his taser.
One taste. Lay down on your back. Lay down on the back.
Warren pulls out the taser prongs and goes towards the officer.
Lay back. I'm gonna shoot you.
The officer fires 3 times. Warren later died at a local hospital. Officer Contreras is now on administrative leave. Warren's family say they had also called the day before asking for a mental health deputy because they believed he was having a manic attack. An attorney for the family previously released Ring doorbell and cell phone video of the incident. They're now calling for the officer to be fired. Terry and Julie, there are far too many shootings of unarmed black men, and every one I watch takes a little bit more out of me. This one did the same, but for a different reason. Julie, I see strong arguments for the officer that could amount to an acquittal for him, and the "Our Father" that you can hear in the audio after the shooting would be a reason a lot of jurors would acquit. How do you see this case faring in the grand jury, though?
So I don't think this case is going to the grand jury, I'll be honest. I don't see it heading that direction. I think the problem we see here when we talk about shootings, there's, different things happen in different cases. In this case, I don't think it's the actions of the officer that's the problem. It's the actions of the fact that the police department can't provide what they're supposed to provide, which is a mental health deputy. Now, I can't promise you if a mental health deputy had come out there and had studied and known how to deal with mental health issues for 1,000 years that the result would have been different, but at least we would have had a shot at it being different. And to me, it's not this officer that did anything wrong. I think the officer really did try to do everything right. De-escalate, walk out, tell him exactly what he's going to do. I'm not sure he has options when someone is running towards him with the potential of a gun being taken. But I wish that there had been another option and a mental health officer would have come. Perhaps we'd have a different result.
And Terry, I tend to agree with Julie there, and I think a lot of the focus is there, not on the officer. And so I'm still asking, and I'm really angry, the fact that we keep putting officers who are armed in these situations who have minimal, if no mental health training, because death is far too common the result. This, to me, screams civil rights suit all over it. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, if there is no grand jury and there is no indictment, or if there is an indictment and there is a subsequent acquittal, which I agree with Julie, I think there would be an acquittal if in case the case goes forward. But I think the real solution here is what you said, Brian. We absolutely need training as far as these officers are concerned, and we need mental health professionals responding to these types of incidents. And frankly, yes, a civil suit should be brought here. And I know that there have been some discussions about a civil suit, and that is what, in fact, the family should do.
Exactly. We'll be sure to monitor both the criminal and potential civil cases. Julie and Terry, thank you very much for joining us. And thank you for joining us here at Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.